Hey guys, so this is the first video going over just equations review. So really basic, nothing too mind-blowing here at all. This is just kind of getting us back into the groove of algebra. All right, so I'm going to go over a couple of these with you just as a reminder, and then you're going to finish up the rest of them for homework. So I'm going to leave the first couple for you. They're pretty simple. I think you guys can do the one-step equations. So I'm looking now down at number 6. All right, so remember when we have an equation that is dividing, so our whole goal with solving equations, so our goal when solving equations is going to be to get the variable by itself. Also say isolate the variable. That's another way of saying it. Isolate variable. Okay, so we're trying to get the variable all by itself. In order to move stuff across an equal sign, okay, so an equal sign cuts your equation into two halves. So in order to cross that equal sign, you have to use opposite operations. And whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other no matter what. Remember, back in middle school, you learned it's a balance. You got to keep things balanced. So whatever you put on one side, you got to put on the other, so on and so forth. So because this equation has division here, right? Something that looks like a fraction is actually division. So we're saying p divided by 2 equals -11. So the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So I'm going to multiply both sides by this denominator. So multiply by 2, multiply by 2. These twos cancel, which is what we wanted. We wanted to cancel or get rid of that so we can get our variable by itself. So now I'm just left with p, and then 2 times -11 is -22. And then, of course, you can always go back and check it by plugging in that answer in for the variable. So then we have -22 over 2, and that equals -11, which is what the original problem is. So yes, we know we have the correct answer. Okay, so one-step equations are pretty easy. A one-step equation means you only need one operation. You're only doing one thing. All right, so let's jump on down to just remember, so if you look at 9 and 10, notice that you have two numbers here, 7 and 4. Add those together first. So look at each side of the equal sign. If you can combine like terms, go ahead and do it before you start moving stuff across the equal sign or trying to isolate the variable. So if you look at number 10, you have n plus 4n, so you'd add those together, and that just gives you 5n, and then you work from there. All right, when we have parentheses, this is distributive property. So with parentheses, we're always going to do those first. So when you have a number directly outside a set of parentheses, that means multiplying. So let's look at 12. So notice I have a -7 out here. The negative sign, whatever sign's in front of the number, it goes with it. So we're going to do this here and here. A lot of people call this distributive property, call it rainbow method, whatever it is that you call it. All right, so as we look at this, we have -7 times 4b. So you multiply the numbers, -7 times 4 is -28, and then the b just sticks with it. And then we do -7 times a +6, which actually turns into a -42. Now, I want you guys to start getting rid of this double sign stuff. So for example, if we had -7 times 6, I do not want you to put down here in the, so when we're doing it in the problem here, so I do not want to see this plus -42. I do not want to see double signs. All right, it's just a plus and negative is the same thing as subtracting. So don't do double signs, because as we get into harder and harder equations and as we get into quadratics, it's going to make everything so much more confusing. So you stick with the -42, not plus -42. Okay, so we don't ever do that. So we don't want that at all. Okay, and then from here, you just continue to solve the equation. I'm going to let you solve that one on your own. All right, then we get into some harder ones. As you can see, there's a lot more distributive property coming up. So these 13 through 18, notice that you have a double set of parentheses. Okay, so a couple things to keep in mind here. All right, look at number 15. This is a negative 2 that you are distributing to both things on the inside. Okay, so make sure that negative goes with it. Over here, you have a -7 that you're distributing. You also have a -5 that you're distributing. Okay, and then I'm going to do number 18 with you. Okay, so if we look at number 18, I'm going to start by distributing the first set. So I'm going to distribute 5. So this is 30 minus 25b. Here, this is a negative sign. I'm going to distribute that as really like a 1's there, right? So it's -1 or a -1 there. So this becomes -2b plus 7. Really, really careful on your signs. Equals 64. All right, so now I'm going to look at combining like terms. So the first thing I did was distribute. Second thing we're going to do is combine like terms. It's exactly what it sounds like, the terms that look alike we put together. All right, so if we look at this, we've got 30 here, and we also have a plus 7 here. So those are numbers without any letters. And then we have a -25b and a -2b, so we can put those together. So 30 plus 7 gives me 37. -25 minus 2 is going to give me a -27b. All right, and then you just solve it as normal from here. So now this is just a two-step equation. I'm going to subtract 37 from both sides. And then divide by -27, divide by the number that's with the letter. Oh, sorry, those cancel. Those don't really cancel. That becomes -1 equals b. And there's your answer. Okay, so when you have multiple sets of parentheses, do the parentheses first. So distribute, combine like terms, and then solve as normal. All right. Okay, and then finally down here, notice that you have variables on both sides of the equal sign, right? So first thing we got to do is distribute. So let's look at number 22. So if I'm going to distribute that, this becomes 15a minus 6 equals -13 plus 8a. Now I want to get my a's together. I always try to avoid negatives. So I kind of look at my numbers here. So I have a 15a and I have a positive 8a. So in order to move it, I'm going to have to subtract it. So if I subtract it, I want to subtract the 8 so that I don't end up with a negative number. So minus 8a minus 8a. So we have 7a minus 6 equals -13. Add 6 to both sides. 7a equals 7, so then a equals 1. Okay? All right, so you guys are on your own. If you have any questions, please let me know.